Hey everyone, and welcome to The Year Was, the podcast all about today that gives you just enough information to effectively be that guy at the party, causing all your friends to question, hey, who invited you? Like, seriously, why are you here? I'm your host, Michael Montalvan. For the next few minutes, we will swim through the river of time to find out what makes today truly unique. On this episode, we examine the events that occurred July 29th. You know what the JRR stands for in J.R.R. Tolkien? It's John Ronald Reuel. So is this a Tolkien episode? Kind of. Tolkien will get his own episode eventually. But to give you a brief biography, he was born in South Africa, January 3rd, 1892, but he moved to England after his father died when he was only 4. To be clear, he moved with his mother and his younger brother. He didn't move on his own at the age of 4. His mother died in 1904, and he and his brother became wards of a Catholic priest after his mother had become a devout Catholic. He fought in World War I, worked on the staff for the New Oxford Dictionary, and taught at the universities of Leeds and Oxford. He was an academic and a writer who translated a version of Beowulf in 1926, but he is perhaps best known for his work The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The thing about these was that these stories came about because he wanted to amuse himself, writing fantasy stories just during his free time. First came The Hobbit in 1937, and this proved to be such a success that the publisher asked for a sequel, and 17 years later, we got just that. The year was 1954, and on this day, July 29th, The Fellowship of the Ring, the first part of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, was first published. It has influenced and inspired countless people, by my count, at least 4, and has seen adaptations of many forms, perhaps most famously, when it was finally made into a feature film in 1978 by Ralph Bakshi. So, how exactly did the book come to be? Well, as previously mentioned, while working on versions of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and his translation of Beowulf, Tolkien was writing bits of fantasy lore that would eventually become the Silmarillion. And he made this so that the Elvish languages he was creating had a place to exist. Also wanting to entertain his children, he dreamt up stories of Middle-earth and took inspiration for these from his love of myths and legends. From these we got The Hobbit, which was the lighter and a bit more humorous than what the Lord of the Rings would eventually become. It was also the longest of the stories that he began to tell up to this point. After the publication of The Hobbit, Tolkien would go in and revise and edit and create his darker continuation of the story of The Hobbit, switching from Bilbo to Frodo Baggins and the Journey of the Fellowship. In order to complete this story, he would have to take from the world he had created and craft a story that has withstood the test of time. Many of us know The Lord of the Rings as a trilogy, perhaps because of Peter Jackson's films. But what you may not know is that it was not envisioned this way. In fact, it was envisioned for adults and intended to be released in one volume made up of 6 books. The publisher, though, concerned about its bulk and the risk involved, decided to separate the work, including 2 books per part, and made it a trilogy. And much like The Hobbit had before it, it became very popular. And so over the next year, they released The Two Towers and then Return of the King. An interesting thing about The Lord of the Rings is that apparently the Beatles approached Tolkien and Stanley Kubrick to make a movie starring them, but apparently the request didn't get very far. That's going to do it for us today. If you want to hear more, give us a rate and a review. That helps me out and helps steer this in a direction that is hopefully good for all. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find the audio version on your podcast app of choice. You can find me on social media and at YouTube at the Apple Cider Club. And as always, I want to thank the Tim Kreitz Band for our musical theme. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.